On the mission to track down a missing billionaire at his luxury island resort, things take a totally unexpected turn. Our helicopter gets shot. Stranded, we find ourselves fighting for survival while uncovering the gruesome secrets buried beneath this forsaken place. Holy shit. I love video games. I'm just terrible at playing them. So let's see if I'm not only able to survive this place, but also find out what happened to this lovely posh family. Now, normally games like Sons of the Forest are about the simple joys of gathering resources, building a cozy base and living out your survival fantasy. But no. That's not gonna happen here. Follow me as I get sidetracked with its plot and totally forget about the usual survival shenanigans. Delicious. After helping the only survivor besides me, my buddy Calvin here, I realized we had a problem. Well, there are several, but first, in order to survive, you generally need 3 things: water, food, and shelter. And so I checked my inventory and was prompted to open an emergency pack, which contained a bunch of essentials, like an axe, a GPS locator, which serves as a map, and a handy handbook with crafting instructions. Oh, thank God it's the 3rd edition. I inspected our crash site and immediately found a tarp. Shelter problem already solved. I thought anyways. No, don't need that. Ah, finally. One embarrassing struggle with placing down a basic shelter later, I checked the GPS locator to head to the first point of interest. So I've never played the first one, but I've seen videos, so I generally know what to expect. I'm not going into this totally blind. Nope, I'm not going in here yet. After getting the first issue out of the way, I should figure out how to get food supplies. A basic campfire was a good place to start, and the handbook luckily got me covered. I somehow still didn't learn anything from building that basic tarp and continued to struggle placing down 2 sticks and a couple of stones for a moment. Look, in my defense, I never attended any kind of field trips into nature when I was at school. But we got a fire now, however there's nothing to roast on it. Well, at least Calvin is enjoying the atmosphere. Crafting a bow to hunt some deer sounded like a good plan. But I'll give you a little spoiler here, I would never ever use this bow again during the entire play session. The reason, you might ask. Typically a bow is used to shoot arrows. But hell, I couldn't work out that this is supposed to resemble feathers and not leaves. So all I was left with was mushrooms and some berries with unknown effects for now. That wouldn't be enough to survive, obviously. Maybe chopping down some trees would make me think of other ways to get food. And just like that, I stumbled across a blueprint for a fish trap in that handbook. Calvin also finally stopped being useless. But then I heard a noise, which sounded a bit like a little kitten trapped under a rock. With a strange sense of what's to come, I took one of the mats to heal up. And after Calvin and I finished the fish trap, it was already getting dark and we seemed to have survived our first day after the crash. Waking up hungry, I downed some dry cereal and an energy drink. A true breakfast for champions. One major issue remained, however, the lack of clean drinking water. We had crashed right next to this river, providing not only a steady supply of fresh fish, but also water. Unfortunately, drinking too much of it would still make you sick. And with no other hint at what to do next, and too much fear to enter any of the caves for now, I followed one of the GPS markers on the map. Clean water had to wait for a little longer. I made contact with what I suspected was the source of the constant wailing. At first they seemed curious, kicking off what looked like a welcome ceremony. I kept a safe distance and didn't engage. As I carefully backed away from the slightly unsettling sight of half-naked men jumping around trees, I stumbled upon yet another worrying sign that our stay here wasn't exactly going to resemble a 5-star resort. I went on and continued my way to the quest marker regardless. My deceased sidekick here dropped a flashlight. Apparently that was the game's subtle way of saying that it's time to face my fears and head into cave exploration, I guess. But with the sun already setting, I had a stronger urge to organize our camp first. Turns out the indigenous people around here weren't exactly thrilled about their new neighbors. After a quick search for any more surprise visitors, the danger seemed to be under control. The lack of health items in combination with the hostility of the locals was worrying to say the least. In addition, I still hadn't figured out a way to get clean water. Desperation kicked in, so I pulled out a blueprint for a rain collector, which required the creative use of a turtle's former residence. And where do you usually find turtles? At the beach, obviously. So I left camp and on the way ran into another creature. This one looked less like the previous ones, not exactly comforting, but she didn't seem hostile. She was cautious, keeping her distance before eventually disappearing in the undergrowth. After a long trek, I finally reached the beach, only to find a distinct lack of said turtles. Frustrated, I looked for another place to go to and noticed a rising smoke from the tree line. Maybe there are some survivors. But of course, this wasn't a heartwarming reunion scene. I got out of there quickly and decided to follow the other quest marker. Eventually, I stumbled across an abandoned camp and, jackpot, I finally found a pot. Clean water was almost within reach. Naturally, that's when the mutants decided to show up again. And after barely surviving the encounter, I decided it was time to set up a proper base, somewhere safe and secure. So I built the cozy little cabin, right here. Chopping down trees is so satisfying. Calvin also decided to show up. And with my trusty, slightly concussed companion by my side, we got to work finishing the cabin before nightfall. Well, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the locals decided to voice their opinions. Apparently they weren't fans of urban development, and surprisingly, no midnight mutant raid. The next day I scooped up some murky pond water, boiled it up and threw in some random ingredients, just like I used to do it back at home. Meanwhile, the cabin construction continued, while being distracted by these guys again. And just when I thought things couldn't get weirder, multi-armed mutant lady made her grand reappearance. But wait, a helicopter? Finally, maybe the rescue for our rescue mission. They didn't care. After a chaotic workday, we finally finished the little cabin, complete with a bed and a very sophisticated stick lock on the door. I was ready to enjoy our first peaceful night in the new home. In all the chaos, I lost a little track of my original mission to track down the lost teammates. I'll blame the raiding locals for distracting me in my quest. This soldier was buried, so I needed a shovel. The only lead I had was the cave entrances marked on my GPS. And on the way there, I stumbled onto something unexpected. Was this my first clue to what had happened here? It sure looked less like a vacation getaway and more like someone was prepping for nuclear fallout. The only thing of interest here, however, was a locked door requiring a keycard. And with an eerie feeling, I headed out and finally reached the first cave. Sadly, I came empty-handed out of this endeavor as well. I tried my luck with another cave. This one was really close to my starting point. I probably should have checked it earlier. Inside, I found some folks waiting for my arrival already. Overconfident from the past encounter, I dove headfirst into a brawl, but unsuccessful this time. What followed was a horrifying crawl through the dark, nothing short of dreadful. Exploring without proper weapons or protection, sneaking and dodging zombie-like creatures along the way, almost dying again, but ultimately finding something that could potentially help me reach my goals. With the new gadget at hand, I headed back to the first cave I explored to use the new toy. But disappointment was waiting for me once again. I had to find something to be able to dive and reach further into the tunnels. There is another cave close to my little cabin I hadn't explored yet. Here I discovered the location of the entertainment bunker. As if I wasn't entertained enough already, I'll spare you the details. A dark cave, strange monsters, lots of scary stuff. It was also here where I found the rebreather. Obviously the device needed to progress. Before diving in with the rebreather, I was distracted by the last GPS position marked on the map, located just off the coast. A raft was quickly built. Overcoming my first rafting practice session, I ultimately reached the rubber dinghy. All I found was another dead soldier next to a pistol, finally a proper weapon. Back on land, I was already able to test the firearm. Feeling more confident, I returned to the very first cave, praying I wasn't missing yet another tool. Interesting things found in this dungeon, a fun slide. the location of another bunker, Maintenance A, and finally a shovel, plus this massive underground structure. Something was seriously off here. Sadly, the entertainment bunker didn't have anything to entertain me except for another locked door for which I was missing the correct keycard. So it's Maintenance Bunker A instead. And with the shovel now I could easily dig up the entrance, where I luckily found, you guessed it, my first keycard. And on the way back I thought it's a good idea to get the last quest marker done before heading back into the food bunker paradise. I found a shotgun among my dead comrade. Full metal jacket style, I was ready to hit some mutants or aliens or whatever these are. Let's go to the food bunker. These guys weren't just hoarding food, they had a full-blown underground farming operation going on here. What were these people prepping for? The deeper I went, the stranger it got. I eventually discovered a party scene at a surveillance room. Blood, panic, and people mutating into horrifying flesh monsters. You get the vibe. Finally, the game decided to throw me into one of its few cutscenes. I guess I finally found the Puftons. They didn't seem to be keen on having a glass of champagne with me in appreciation of their rescue though.
Champagne?
They were mutant abominations now. What came next was one of the most annoying fights I ever had. A grenade finally did the trick though.